Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Insightful Babes. And we have Ms. Yasmin here with us today. I'm so excited to have you here. How are you doing, Yasmin?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with y'all.
Thank
We're
you.
happy. We're happy that you're here with us para chismear. We're so ready to talk about your book and what it is that made you write this book, Ándale Prieta. And I really am very curious about the name of why you chose it. But before we start talking about all of that and what you do, I'd like for you to introduce yourself to our audience. Who is Jasmine Ramirez?
I think that's a fun question. I'm Yasmin Ramirez. I'm from El Paso, Texas. I grew up on the border with Texas and Mexico, Juarez, Mexico. I'm a writer. I'm an educator. I'm a music lover. I'm a foodie, a dog mom.
Ooh.
Um,
Dog moms.
yes, yeah, dog mom. Right now, they're not happy with me. They're in the backyard. But
Oh,
I was like, you have to get out because I didn't want them to bark.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm all those things, all kind of lumped in together into one.
That's funny. I have my dog locked in the room right now because she always wants to make a special appearance as well.
Oh
Like she'll
yeah.
come in here and then like she just kind of like will stand in front of the camera to come out. I'm like,
Yeah, she steals our spotlight.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
She
But
knows it too.
everybody
She's like, hi.
yeah, she does.
yeah, yeah. All of our audience, you guys already know that we have dogs, y pues they really love coming out on the podcast. But know that you're also a dog mom. Love that. So let's go ahead and get started. You wrote a book called Ándale Prieta. Why did you choose? Ay, yo luego con la question right away. I'm jumping in right away, guys.
You're
I'm
like
ready for
holding
this. Let's
it.
let's get this started. Why did you choose that name?
So fun fact, that wasn't the original title of the book. In my
Oh.
draft versions, I had titled it Por un amor. And so
Mm.
music is a big theme in the book. And so I
Mm-hmm.
named it that. And then through the editorial process, it just wasn't really working. Like it only made
Mm.
sense to me. I think an outside reader, it didn't. And one of the editors I worked with pointed out that Andale Prieta comes out, the phrase comes out in the book like three
Mm.
different times, three really important times.
Mm.
And so then it just seemed like a natural fit. At first, I wasn't sure, like, is this going to work? But then I really loved that. Well, one, I'm Prieta. That was my nickname growing up,
Mm.
and then two, that was a phrase that my grandma used to say to me. So it was like we were both on the cover in this one phrase, and so then I really fell in love with it,
Mm.
and that's how we ended up with the title.
Yeah, I love it. What does like that word "preta" mean to you? Like, because I know a lot of people, like we had talked about it, they kind of see it as negative. But what does that
Mm.
word mean to you?
You know, what's interesting for me, I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's a loaded word. It's a hard word, especially in the Latinx community, because it can mean so many things depending on who it comes from, depending on the tone.
Mm.
So I have noticed in like just my prietaness that when it's offensive, people say things like bien prieta. When you
Oh,
say it like the bien in front, and then suddenly the tone is just completely different.
Mm.
yeah.
And so growing up, I was just Prieta. Like that was my name. And I never really noticed anything about it until like outside of my household, I heard it used. And then I was like, oh, wait, this isn't always like a good thing.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's interesting that I learned that outside of my household. I'm lucky because I know there's a lot of people who learn that in their household. Um,
Mm.
and I think though for me, it became a way for me to accept like who I was. My grandma always celebrated my skin tone.
Mm.
You know, it for me it means love and it means a connection to my grandma. I'm lucky to have that, and I realize
Yeah.
not everybody does, but I hope that I highlight in the book that I know it's a loaded word, But I'm also choosing to embrace all the goodness that came from it. And I don't want to let, random strangers who have said unkind things to me take away like the cariño that
Mhm.
my grandma put in that for me.
Yeah, and I do love that. Like, you pretty much are embracing, the whole Prieta thing because, like you say, sometimes it could be negative, to certain people, and that is totally understandable. We don't all have the same experiences with that. But I love how you embrace that in your book, and the saying "Ándale Prieta" and what it means to you. So I want to know how your journey as a writer began. Was it something that you always had in mind of doing, or was there like an experience of yours, throughout your life that made you want to write about what you wrote in your book?
Well, I always wrote. I always had a journal. I always scribbled and stuff. I would make up stories often. I always wrote fiction though. Even for like a short time, I was writing like horror stories.
Ooh.
But I was always a big reader, and I think as a reader, like you want to create your own, right? When you're reading all these things, and so that came really naturally to me.
Mhm.
I don't It's funny because I'm so glad that I've always like hung on to memories because
Mhm.
I found this program from high school and I was in it. Like I was on the dance team in high school and it had like little bios for us. And I had forgotten I said this until I was like trying to put stuff together to share like for the book. And it says like Yasmin wants to be a poet and a writer. And when I saw it, I was like, "What? I said that? I didn't. I honestly do not remember saying that at all." And so I don't know if younger me knew before I did because I didn't go to school to be a writer. I just always considered it a hobby until after I graduated from college and after I'd been in the workforce for a little while, that I still had this like journal that I would carry everywhere with me that I would scribble in. And I'm like, well, what if it's not a hobby? What if I actually like try this? Because there's that fear that I'm going to be like a starving writer, right? That they tell
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
There's that fear. But I'm like, well, what if I just try? Like, and
Mhm.
I'm so glad that I was willing to try because if I hadn't, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today. Like,
Mhm.
I wouldn't have made it this far.
um so also I want to kind of like talk about, because it's so hard for, I don't know, maybe like the Latino community, like putting like ourselves out there, and especially if it's like family, like I know my family's really like, no pongas ahí, our business, don't be putting our business out there or stuff like that. So like it was beautiful like to even hear like the stories of like Ita and everything. Like I felt like I related to you a lot. So how, like, was it hard for you to kind of put yourself out there and like open up like your life to everyone?
Um, this sounds really naive, but when I was writing the book, I was so focused on following the story and telling it well that I didn't really think about people were going to read this. I was worried people were going to like it. I want them to like it, obviously, right? Like, oh, please like it, please like it. But then
Yeah.
about a week before the book came out, I had like this panic attack of, oh my God, everyone's going to know about my life.
Yeah.
And my husband was like, "You just thought about this right now?" and I that sounds so silly, but I just was so focused on telling the story, telling it well, honoring my Ita and my family that when I say my family, I mean their story as a whole. Because I know there's some parts where not everyone is painted in a good light, myself included. Um, but I felt like if I can tell the story and honor it the best way I can, then I'm doing the best. Because the other thing is, no one's perfect, right? None of us are perfect. All of us
Yeah.
have flaws. And I think if I had tried to make everyone look perfect, it would have been false and it wouldn't have rung true. And a lot of the most beautiful reactions I've gotten are like, I relate to you in this book. I related to it so much because of this, because my family, because I have an abuelita, an abuelito. And that's been like the most beautiful experience because writing can be so solitary. It's literally just me and a laptop. And then it was me, my laptop, and stories. And then I would interview my family or I would do research. But knowing that all that time I spend alone is connecting with other people has been so beautiful. And I like lose words when people tell me, you know, this made me think of my grandma or this helped me. I've gotten several people telling me it helps them grieve like their loved one.
Oh, okay.
And so, wow, I don't have words for that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I felt like one of the one of the parts for me that I could like say related to, which is probably gonna be funny, but it was when you like cut yourself and you were trying to like hold it in because you didn't want your mom to get upset. Like I felt like, oh my gosh, that was me. Like I'm always like, you know, you try not to get your parents upset or like your mom, and I felt like, oh my gosh, like I didn't think anybody else would really feel that way, or like I didn't think anybody else went through that, you know, and it was pretty like cool to see that like somebody else went through that as well. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I think so many times, especially for Latinx parents, like their fear comes out as anger,
Yeah, I
right? When
think
you
so.
hurt yourself, they're like,
Yeah,
"What did you do? ¿Qué te hiciste?"
uh-huh.
And you're like, "Ah," as a kid, right? And as a child, you can't differentiate that they're just really scared for you,
Hmm.
and so you just think I did something wrong. And I remember that panicked feeling. And like I was in some ways really fearful of my mother at sometimes. And as an adult looking at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, she was just really scared. I cut
Yeah,
my thumb off.
yeah.
Um, but I think that's something that happens a lot, right? We have that connectivity with our culture, with our family, and it's like I think so many times we're not taught how to express our feelings well, right?
Yeah.
We're quick to anger, we're quick to, and anger is based in fear always. So now I see it, and now my mom laughs at it when she read the book. She's like, I wasn't like that, and I'm like, what? And my sister and I are making faces and are like, really? Okay.
That's funny.
Yeah, that happens. That happens. Yeah, después, once everything happens, they're like, what? I didn't do that. I didn't say that. And it's like,
Yeah, my mom is like, estás loca? No.
Oh. I love how you were really open about that, and it is true. We do express that fear. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about that. How were you able to embrace your cultura, like being super straight honest, because you are super honest in your book about what we experience as the Latino community. You do live in El Paso, so we know that the Latino community in El Paso is huge, right? So, how was growing up with that fear and now embracing your cultura using also your book? What's that like for you?
I think like anything else, when you're growing up, you go through these like ebbs and flows, right? Of trying to figure yourself out. And so for me, you know, a lot of my now the love that I have for like Spanish language, for Spanish music is very much rooted with my IPA because that's what I was surrounded with. And my teenage years, I sort of wanted to reject all of it because I didn't really fit also in this sort of like spectrum of Latinidad, right? Because I didn't speak Spanish super well, but I understood it. Um, in some ways, I grew up very Mexican, right? With the food I ate, the traditions we had, and in other ways, I was very American in, like pushing education and that my dominant language was English, that, I could even entertain, I want to be a writer, right? That's a privilege
Yeah.
that not a lot of people have. And so part of me wanted to reject being Mexican, because of that, because I didn't fit with like the kids here that spoke Spanish, right? I was very like at one point in high school, people called me güera, even though I'm obviously not güera, and because of how I spoke, and also I very much connected Mexicanness with my father. So in the book, it highlights my struggles with my father, and so those got kind of lumped together. But I think living in Dallas really kind of woke me up into like, oh wow, I really appreciate my culture. Like like the warmth, the openness, I remember missing being called mija so much, right? From even like the lady at the grocery store, like,
Yeah.
¿Cómo está, mija? Little things like that I was like, wow, there's this warmth that I didn't realize existed because I'd known it my whole life. So when you take that away, you learn a lot about what you're missing and like where you're from, like not just physically, but culturally. And then also having to explain myself quite often when I lived in Dallas and dealing with microaggressions that I was like, wait a minute, this is weird. And so I kind of just did this circle. And so, which I think that's part of growing up, is learning yourself, learning what you like from your culture, maybe what you don't like, right? I highlight that a little bit in the book. I really hate sort of the patriarchal kind of things that happen in Latinx culture. And I can choose to reject that, but I can also choose to embrace everything else that I love and continue to keep that warmth, the care, things like that.
Yeah. And just to be clear to all of our listeners or anybody who's watching us here on YouTube, Ita is Jasmine's grandmother, which is what, I'm sorry, my chihuahua just walked in.
They're on one today.
They're all on, yeah. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, I just wanted to clear that
I
up.
heard her little cough.
Yes, you hear. Let me go ahead and close the door. I don't know.
I know they're all on today.
Okay.
Oh, and then I don't
Anyways.
know. I'm sure that you understood this, but a lot of people don't realize that Ita is short for abuelita. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Ita, she didn't like abuela. She was like hated it, and she
That's my
didn't like
grandma.
abuelita. So she was like Ita works, and that's where that comes from.
Oh, okay. Alrighty, well, there
That's
you have
fun.
it, guys.
Yeah.
And it's funny because there's a lot of grandmothers who don't like abuelita or abuela, right? I have friends who call them mama or mamita. I do call my grandma abuela. She does like that, so I don't know. It's like, okay, I call her that, but yeah, it's true. Many don't.
Yeah, like my grandma doesn't like it either, and then my mom, she doesn't really like it either. So she likes it. She's like, call me grandma or like Grammy or I don't know. It's funny. I'm like, oh, I wonder if I'm gonna be the same way too. Like, don't call me abuelita.
No me digas abuela.
Yeah, I think it's hard. For my grandma, I knew she didn't like it because it made her feel old. Like she thought of abuela and abuelita como estoy vieja. No, call me Ita. And so that's why she opted for that.
So I know a lot of our listeners know that I'm from El Paso as well. So I wanted to know what is one of your favorite things about El Paso? That's a hard one, but like a couple of favorite things from El Paso.
One of my favorite things about El Paso. Ooh, yeah, that is a hard one. I was like, I thought of one and I was like, wait, here's another one.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the nights in El Paso are the most beautiful that exist in a desert landscape. Just that it can be like really hot during the day, and then once the sun starts to set, there's like this coolness that comes. There's always a breeze. Because I've been to other, like in Arizona, there's like a breeze, but it's like a dryer is hitting you. And here, there's like a cool breeze. The night sky is just like really beautiful. Even though it is a city, you can still see the stars for the most part, depending on where you are. There's a certain smell to the city. And that sounds weird to say, but I don't know. I call it, it's like a dirt smell, but it smells really nice. And then when it rains, it's even more amazing. I think it's called like the cresoto or something that it like does some, I don't know, but it's, I missed that smell the entire time I did not live here.
Oh, now you're making me homesick.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Oh, wow. So I know I was into another podcast that you did, and they were talking about something like a lot of people don't know about El Paso. So I know like there's like what is one of like the biggest misconception that you would kind of want to shine light on about El Paso and like what we're kind of known for, but like what you really want us to be known for.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, how much time do you have? No, I'm kidding. Yeah. I spent like 10 years of my life explaining El Paso to people when I lived in Dallas. Nobody knew where it was. I talk about it in the book, how I would do this, and I would be like, it's right here. I'm trying to think. There literally is so many things. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that this is like a big, dangerous city. That like bad things happen and there's undocumented individuals like just swarming the streets and wreaking havoc and robbing and stabbing and killing. That drives me insane, literally insane. Like people who believe the propaganda that has been spread about border cities, El Paso in particular, and it just brought it to like an apex. The fact that we had a very racialized shooting happen here because of that propaganda really upsets me, because that's like me trying to tell someone what the Midwest is like when I've never lived there. And there's plenty of people from El Paso that have spoken to the safety, who actually show like we've been in the top 3 safest cities in the United States for I don't even know how long. Our crime rate is lower than most large cities of this size. And even with that data, people are like, no. And so that upsets me, because then it's not just about data. It's about the color of people's skin here and their cultural background and their ancestry. And then that's just a whole other topic that upsets me.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like, I feel like, okay, you two are from El Paso. I don't know much about El Paso. Tell me more. I want to know more. Yeah, but something that I just realized is that we're all border girls here, right here. And yeah, there's a lot of like talk about what's good, what's bad. And like you say, you have to experience, you have to live here to be able to like say, what it is that we do experience. But most of it, a lot of people just talk to talk, and they don't realize, that whatever that they're saying, it could be negative and could affect, the people that actually do live in these border cities. But okay, let's jump back to your book. I want to know what the process of writing this book was like to you. Were there times where maybe you had doubt or fear of like, maybe this is not what I should be doing or writing? How was that process for you?
It had its very beautiful moments, and then it also had these really hard moments when I was writing it, and a lot of moments of self-doubt. Like, am I doing this right? Am I writing this right? Because writing it obviously took a lot of self-reflection. And then it also took me to moments I didn't necessarily want to dwell in. I've mentioned this before in other places. Like, I didn't really want to write about my father. Like, I didn't want to give him the space in my book. But then if he's missing, then it doesn't, then a piece of me is missing, because his absence affected me greatly. And so I had to include that. And so, it was a lot of tears, sometimes a lot of frustration. But sometimes, I don't know, there's this double edge to it. Because now when I read it, and I look at it, you know, I get to relive some of these moments. And I get to be in them now instead of like trying to recreate the story. I'm just in them, and I get to experience being with my Ita again, having that light innocence of like a kid, right, cutting their hand and being scared that something bad is going to happen. And that was my biggest worry at that age.
Mm-hmm.
And that's beautiful to be that carefree. And so I get to experience a lot of that. And I also got to experience healing in the tears, in the frustration. You know, a lot of this book started as a way of mourning my grandmother's loss. And so I got to go through a lot of the grieving process myself in writing it. And I had to learn to let go of a lot of the guilt I had for not being as present as I could have been in the last years of her life. And so that was a hard thing to swallow. Like even now I'll have pangs of it, like, ugh. And then I remember like she lived her life. She knew what it was like. Yeah. She knew. And so I have to remind myself of that when I feel like, you know, the voice in your head that just likes to make you feel bad sometimes. And I'm like, wait, no, she knew. And in her own ways, I feel like she did a lot to make this book happen. Like I'm very superstitious. And so I feel like my Ita, like at different points, like le do la bendición to the book in different ways. Like, you know, like the anniversary of her death was last week, actually. It was 15 years since she passed away. But when I signed the contract for the book, it was like the same week, like of her death. And so I was like, oh my God, I just realized this. Like, I feel like, and I had tried to get it published before and it just didn't work. It didn't work. And then it was like, now the book is ready. Now she's ready. Cause I think some of the stuff in there, she wouldn't be necessarily happy that I shared if she was alive. But in her own way, like things have happened that have let me know that she's okay. Like even the book release was 4 months ago in April, right? 5 months ago. It was after my birthday. And so I'm like, this is the most amazing gift I could ever get from like the universe. And I choose to believe it comes from her.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. I do believe that too. I want to know, like, what are some of the traits from Ita that you see in yourself?
I can be a peleonera.
I love
it. Yeah, I can be a peleonera for sure. You know, my Ita didn't like back down, and sometimes I think in my own way, maybe not necessarily the same ways, but in my own way, I'm the same way. Like I'm very terca, and I think that stubbornness has like got me to the place that I am with the book. That even though I got rejections and that I struggled with it, I still kept going. I mean, I took some breaks because sometimes your ego, right, is like, oh, I don't know if I can. But I kept going and kept going, and I have that from her, and that is something I'm very grateful for.
And then also, I like how you talk, like you kind of incorporated like music, you know, for us to listen to certain tunes while we're reading. What is a song that you like kind of resonates a lot with you, like in your childhood, and why?
I think Rosia Ducal is probably the one that resonates the most. Just because I feel like every Sunday that we were getting ready for church, like she was on the radio, like every Sunday. Yeah, I think that one definitely, it hits me a lot. And then I think Edie Gourmet. I don't know if I included it there, but Edie Gourmet, sabor de mí, right? Sabor a mí.
Okay, sí. Sabor a mí.
Yeah, sabor a mí. That song has popped up in my life, and this is where I'm being superstitious again. When I'm having like a really hard time, that song will pop up in the most random places that I'm like, how were they playing Edie Gourmet? And I think that's like I don't know, I think that's a way that she's telling me like everything's gonna be fine. Because I remember even I was having a really hard time when I was like at Nordstrom in Dallas, and they would play piano there. Never did I hear that song there. And one of the days I was just really, really feeling really horrible after she had passed away, and I had to go to work, and the song came on, and I'm like I was walking out of the store to go to like get a
Oh.
coffee, and I like came back because I'm like, I have never heard this song played here ever. And
Mhm.
when you work retail, you hear the same song like over and
Yeah.
over. And
Yeah.
I was really shocked. And then after that, it's just come up in different places in my life.
Mm.
Oh,
Oh, qué bonito.
sí.
Qué bonito. And like I like to say that las coincidencias no existen. So the coincidence things, they don't exist. There's always something behind it if you really just pay close attention to it. So let's go ahead and talk about what advice you would give to anybody out there who would want to, start writing or is maybe afraid of taking that step about talking about their culture or, their own life, their own story.
Yeah, I think so many times we disregard our own stories because we live them, so we don't think they're that interesting. We're like, oh yeah, it's so normal to me,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's like,
Um,
well, yeah.
but I think there's so many interesting things in all of our stories. And so when I was writing the book and when I first started writing it, I was just writing down memories that really stuck with me in my childhood. And so one of my favorite memories that I used to tell like verbally to people, it was when my Ita showed me how to fight with her hands and right. And I would tell that story all the time and people would be like, no, really? Your grandma taught you how to fight? And they were just amazed by it. And then when I wrote it, I was like, okay, wait, yeah, there is something here. Because every time I tell it, people are excited about it. And so I think first look at those stories that you retell over and over. And there's something there. There's a reason that you're telling them. It's not just because it's a funny story. It's like there's always a little subtext to it.
Yeah.
And so the other thing I think is that people just need to do it. Like do I know how to do it? Will I do it right? Will I like if you spend so much time second guessing, you're never going to get started. Right? There's that thing that people say often to writers. Oh, you're a writer. Oh yeah, I have an idea to write a book. I just don't have the time. And so like for me, I'm like, I find that kind of offensive when people say it because I'm like, I don't have the time either, but I make the time. I make it because this is my passion. This is what I want to do. This is my storytelling. And so then just do it because then you're just, filling the air with nonsense. And like, I wish I know, just do it. And there's so many beautiful stories that we have, so many beautiful traditions, just the language flowing in and out. That's something else I love about El Paso that I missed. When I lived in Dallas, if someone spoke Spanish, I was like one of those little prairie dogs, like, right?
Where was that?
Yeah.
And so that ebb and flow of like English and Spanish going in and out here, I think is so beautiful and so distinct that we don't appreciate it because that we live it. But that doesn't happen anywhere else. Anywhere else does that happen other than like border areas or Mexican American families who still have the dynamic of English Spanish. So I think it's just honoring and being brave. That's what it is. You have to be brave.
Yeah. I love it. So we know that you're super busy. You are a busy person. So how do you take time to take care of yourself or even like take time to write and to get like in the creative mode? Like how do you do that or like do you do certain things or
I do something that I write a lot in my head. This sounds weird, but like I usually form the skeleton of what I'm writing just like in my head. Like right now I'm teaching. So whenever I'm teaching, it's really hard for me to be creative because it's hard for me to go from teaching how to write an essay or teaching, making sure they're doing their reading and grading. And then like suddenly I have to like flip this switch and say like, oh, okay, I'm going to be creative now. But so the bulk of my writing is done on writing in between semesters. Like I'll write the bulk. Right now I am trying to write on like Saturday mornings because I tried to finish a manuscript before the end of summer and I couldn't do it. I struggled.
okay.
And that's because I hadn't written parts of it in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I can give you an example and kind of link it into what I'm working on now. So right now I'm working on, I think it's a YA novel, and it's about a girl who grows up in El Paso, but she wants to be a rock star. And so she loves music because I love music. And so she's trying to figure out, like, I guess how she's going to get there. But each chapter features a song. And so I have a list of songs I put together. I did research. I have all this stuff. But then I was like, how do I put this together? And so literally right now when I'm talking to you, when I look up, I have this wall in front of me of where I put all this stuff on the wall of like characters and storylines and what I have written so far. And I'm trying to write a story at Western Playland.
Oh,
When it was like the old Western Playland that is Escarate. And
okay.
Yeah, the better one.
That's different. Yeah.
And so she's there with a friend, and that's as far as I'd gotten in my head. I was like, okay, I know this has to happen. Like there's a conflict that I know has to happen, but I couldn't figure out how to get there.
Okay.
And so I spent days in front of my laptop, just like type, no, delete, type, no, delete.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but now a couple weeks later, I have it. I know what's going to happen. I know how to create the conflict, and that her friend is going to try to flirt with one of the guys that works at Western Playland, and then like
Chisme.
yeah, I'm creating chisme. Because she's like the friend, and then the friend is trying to flirt with the guy, and so I have it all figured out now. But that's where I did that in my head. I haven't written any of it, but I have like the juiciness of it, the giddiness of being like a kid, right? Like being at Western Playland, and you're there without your parent, or an amusement park without your parents. You're there with your friends. There's a cute guy. So I have that in my head already.
Okay. I love that.
Okay, yeah, totally. I mean, she does write, so she is a writer, guys. So of course she would, do that.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's amazing. That's so cool how like you guys can do that. I know writers, Diana, you also write. You need to talk to her, Jasmine, because she also wrote Me Dejó. Like she wrote this. What was it, Diana? It was like a
chapter.
Yeah, and then I was like, where's the next one?
I'm like you. I have it in my mind. I just haven't written it.
It's like, no. It's like your reader here, your fan over here. It's like, come on. Yeah. But like anybody who's tuning in right now and, you guys would like, to write, or maybe you do enjoy writing, you definitely have to go for it. Aquí Jasmine is a great example of it. And, I'm really grateful for what you're doing, Jasmine, with your books and what you're writing and opening up about our culture. Because it's not easy, for many of us Latinos, it's not easy to, be a voice. And that is something that here at Insightful Base we tend to do, to be a voice with you. If you feel like, you can't be a voice alone, well, maybe you can join in a community, right? And together, pues somos voz. So I really appreciate everything that you're doing. And you guys, her book, we will definitely put down her information, but before we finish this episode, I want to know, do you have a favorite quote or a favorite dicho?
I don't know if I have a favorite quote or dicho. I don't think I do. I have to be honest. I don't have something that like I say to myself often. I think what I have, honestly, I use music a lot. So I have like songs that like if I'm not feeling my best, I'll put on to like amp me up, not necessarily like a dicho. I'll tell you one that's funny, that's not something like motivational at all, and you'll laugh a little bit. So my grandma used to actually say this to us, like, when you want something really bad and then it's not what you expected. Right? And so this isn't true, eat that form. So this happened, I think, so my sister wanted children and she kind of struggled, and then she had her first baby, right? And she was complaining to my Ita. And my Ita was like, pero quería baby, no? Chinguese.
Yeah.
And so So we use that like a lot. Even my sister told me this recently because I was like, I'm so busy with all the book, and she's like, oh, but you wanted to be a writer? No, chingues it. And I'm like, oh, okay. But that's more comedic. It's like one of those weird. I don't know. It's love, but it's a hard love, dicho.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Okay, where can our listeners and everybody who's tuning in, where can they find you and where can they find your book?
So they can find me on my website, and on my website has all my social media. That's my Instagram handle that's being shown there, but my website has all the social media. I also have links to buy the book on my website, but you can get it at most retailers. The links on my website, one is to Bookshop, and then the other one is to a local bookstore here in El Paso, Literarity. And if they order, it's a Facebook shop, so you have to have Facebook, but they have signed copies of the book, and that's my way of just like supporting my local community, but people can get it pretty much anywhere.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go ahead and put all of that information, guys, for you to check it out. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Jasmine.
Thank you for having me. I had so much fun.
Yay.
Likewise. Y pues ahí estamos al tanto of your next book.
Or I could interview Diana about her books. Like,
oh my god.
I like that. I think we do like that, right, Insightful Babes? We love that idea. That will be for the next episode, guys.
Yeah, we'll swap. I'll be your guest host, and then Diana could be your guest.
Yeah. Love that. Alrighty, guys. Pues cuídense mucho. Thank you, Jasmine, for being here with us.
Thank you.